Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I hereby call to order the October 18th, 2018 public hearing of the City of Prescott's Board of Adjustment. The board members present this morning are a new member, Larry Meads, Steve Silvernail. To my right is Johnny Forker and Patty Braden, and I am James DiRienzo, the chair. This is an open public hearing and is being taped, recorded, and videotaped by the city. The proceedings are being televised by representatives of the public media, the public, local cable, and the radio stations, and may also be rebroadcast. The number of members present this morning is 5. It will require 3 to make the vote approval. All parties wishing to be heard on the issue are required to raise their hand, be recognized by the chairman prior to speaking. Speakers will be expected to state their name and address for the record so that we may know who is speaking and be able to contact them at a later date if necessary. Please turn off all cell phones or electronic devices. First item on the agenda this morning is the approval of the minutes.
I apologize.
Okay, so now we have one individual who is going to get 2 demerits for doing that this morning.
Three demerits.
No, it's only 2 yet. You do it again, it's 5.
Next week.
So we're going to.
I was really trying to turn it off.
You take a lot of liberties.
I do.
Okay, so.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes of July 19th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any changes, any other discussion on the minutes? If not, I call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Morning, Ray.
You'll have to stay after, you know.
We now have one other board member, Ray Everett. He's got 5 demerits for being late.
I know.
The next item on the agenda is variance 18-009. And by the way, before I begin, there's other people in the audience I'd like to recognize. One is George Worley, planning manager. Katie Peterson will be taking care of our overhead community manager. And then there's George Sheets. Oh, where are you, George? From Planning and Zoning. Thank you very much. And also there's Matt Petracki from the city attorney. Thank you, Matt. And Bryn Stotler, the newest and latest and greatest individual from the planning department. Okay, so once again, let's go back to the agenda. The variance 18-009. Katie.
Good morning, board members. This is regarding a variance request for 1504 Oregon Avenue. The case number is VAR 18-009. I'll go over what's being requested is this is a single family 9 zone. The zoning district setbacks are 25 feet in the front, 25 feet in the back, and 7 feet on the sides. This site features mature trees and boulders on the west side of the lot. Trees and a creek in the right-of-way in front provide some visual buffer to keep in mind. This application indicates plans to acquire land to the northwest to address the rear setback requirements for their proposed addition. And the request is specifically for a front yard setback reduction from the 25 feet that's required to 17.1 foot setback at the narrowest point. And you'll see on the site plan, there's a dashed line that shows where the existing front of the house is. So at the widest point, because it's at an angle to the front lot line, at the widest point, it's 22 feet, existing legal non-conforming setback currently. So that's basically, the current house is grandfathered in at a reduced setback. As you go to the east, the front of the building is is closer to the front lot line. So at the closest point, it's about a little bit less than 17 feet, or sorry, a little bit more than 17 feet. And then by the time you get to the end of the proposed addition there at the easternmost corner of the house in the front, what they're proposing is a 17.1 foot setback from the front. If they follow the line of the house and extend out for their addition, at the narrowest point, the setback they would need would be a 17.1 foot setback. In the rear, the proposed addition would just barely go over their existing lot line. So they've indicated in their application that they intend to acquire a portion of the land to the northeast, to the north and northeast of their lot, to address that rear setback, so that they would then have a conforming setback in the back. So that's their solution to addressing having a proper setback and that meets the zoning code requirements in the rear. What they're requesting is this reduced setback in the front. That's the aerial location map. And then if we look in closer, you'll see the lot layout. Again, the area that they're talking about acquiring is this portion here to the north and northeast. The street edge is, their lot line is set back quite a bit from the existing street edge. So there's a creek that runs through along the right-of-way, right in front of their property. It's not on their property, but right in front. There's a bridge that they use to get from the street edge over to their lot. And a view from the front of the house. As you can see, there are trees. Where the trees are is where the creek runs, and the bridge here. To the east, to the right here is where the addition would be. And again, a little bit closer view so you can see what that would look like. And as you can tell, the house is already set pretty close. It's closer than what the zoning setback is. They're grandfathered in at that reduced setback currently. Just going over the variance criteria, there are boulders in the northwest corner of the site, as I mentioned. So those are the conditions on their lot that make it difficult for them to make an addition to their house to the west or northwest. The reduced front yard setback would still allow adequate emergency access. Other lots with similar slope and easement features are in the area that require setback variances from what's currently other houses on the lot, in the neighborhood have houses on their lots that are set back at varying distances from their front lot lines and set at angles based on the location of boulders on their site. So it is one of those neighborhoods that has a lot of boulders and trees. The requested variance is in compliance with the general plan. The requested setback reduction would allow an addition to the house in a neighborhood where there are similarly sized houses, and again, also have varying setbacks. And that's all for my presentation, but I can answer questions. I believe the applicant is here if you have questions for them about their plans for the area that they plan to acquire to the northeast and the setback that would be required for their proposed addition. What we as staff were recommending is approval with the condition that they acquire that land. So before we would finalize granting of that variance and the building permits, that they demonstrate that they've acquired the land to the northwest to address that rear setback for the proposed addition.
Any further questions for Katie on the board?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Go ahead.
It appears to me from the photographs that we have in the overhead view, are those landlocked lots behind them?
Let's see. Actually, I don't recall. The applicants might be able to answer that. Are you talking about access for the adjacent lots?
Yes.
I believe they've got access through other means. If you see to the west, Mayo Street, it looks like there's some site access here, but they might know the area a little bit better than I do, the applicants.
Okay, it may not be germane to the application. I'm curious about that. Thank you.
Is the applicant here this morning? Yes, sir.
Dennis Bennett, this is my wife Shelley. The land north of us, there's so many, it's a big hilly, rocky hill, and there's no access from that north side at all, at least our house, so.
Okay. And I have another question.
So, sir,
Mr. Chairman, about what's the status of planning for this? Are you waiting for this process to get resolved for you to go forward?
Yeah, there's a couple things in motion. We did the land survey for that small section the beginning of the year, and the guy who owns it is going to wait until he sells his house and that piece of property, and it has yet to go on the market. So I think we're a month or two out before that closes. And then I've got red line marks on my proposed addition plans that I need to correct. And it's also in a flood zone, so there's a couple things in motion. So I don't think it's going quickly, but marching forward anyway.
Very good.
okay, are you planning on pulling this application if in fact you cannot purchase this land for whatever reason?
Oh, that's a great question. I think so, or at least just a rethink of the whole thing. Yeah, so that's a good question.
So you're saying within 2 months perhaps the sale would go through?
That's what I'm hoping, yeah.
Are there any other further questions for the applicant? Is anyone in the, thank you very much. Anyone in the general audience would like to address this issue? If none, I am looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we approve the variance subject to the acquiring of the additional parcel.
Okay, we have a first, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I believe Katie said that the approval was contingent upon the purchase of that lot in the back, correct?
Right.
That's what the motion is requiring, that without that particular purchase, then this variance is not going to be valid.
Very good. Thank you.
And
Okay,
also,
Katie?
just as a reminder, if the variance is granted, that runs with the land. So that's part of the reason why we would need to ensure,
Absolutely.
at this time, that they have a legal conforming setback in the rear there.
He will not have to come back again once this is approved this morning, once he has the land acquisition.
Just a moment. Okay, just a note that in the motion to specify the specific distance that you're approving in the front, the 17.1
Okay.
specifically.
Well, before we do that, my question is to Matt Petracchi. Do we have a limit on how long a particular motion is in play before some of the requirements are completed? I mean, we're giving him 2 months right now. Could it be a year or a year and a half?
You haven't placed a limit on it. If you want to, you can. However, if you don't, then it will remain open.
Forever. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Steve, did you want to amend your motion?
Yes, I will amend the motion. I doubt, quite frankly, that 2 months is sufficient. So I would amend the motion to a time restriction of 3 months.
Okay, there's a change in the motion. Okay, Katie?
The way the suggested motion is worded in the staff report, that might be helpful because there we specify the specific front yard setback to 17.1 feet. So if you state the motion including that specific
Okay,
setback,
so
then that would be helpful to ensure that that's what
Okay, hold on for a second.
clear.
So we're going to hold off on the motion for a moment. George?
Go ahead.
Just a suggestion, Mr. Chairman. We very often grant variances through this process. We generally give applicants a longer period of time to get their variance together and actually get their submittal to us and get permits involved. I would suggest a year is not unreasonable. They
Okay.
have to acquire the adjacent property, they have to pull a building permit for the addition to legally enact the variance. So they have two steps they have to go through, and I think a year is a reasonable amount of time to do that. It's also important for us to specifically say that both the parcel being added and the 17.1 feet are included in that motion.
Well, we can also eliminate the time frame also, can we not?
If you make it a year for the variance to expire, that means they have that amount of time to acquire the property and then pull a building permit to do the addition.
I understand that, but my question is, can this board say no time limit? For instance, if it takes a year and a half or 2 years, because Matt is saying that once we approve this variance, it's there forever.
Once the variance becomes effective, and that effectiveness is determined by, again, the conditions you place on it. If one of the conditions is they have to acquire the adjacent property, then they have to acquire that or the variance doesn't become effective.
Well, that's true. So acquiring the property has nothing to do with a time limit, though. So if we're saying you have to acquire the property, and if we put a time restriction on it, that's a second requirement. But
Correct.
if we don't put a time requirement on it, then we're only looking for you to purchase that particular property before the variance is active. Is that the way I read it? Thank you very much.
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll go back to the motion again.
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay, we have no, you're going to amend the motion.
I'm going to amend the motion.
Takes a lot of liberties.
Yes, all right. I move to approve variance 18-009 to reduce the front yard setback to 17.1 feet to allow the construction of an addition to a single-family house on a lot with borders in legal non-conforming front yard setback under the condition to add and record with Yavapai County the additional 1,842 square feet of land area to the existing lot as shown on the map included in the application, and that this must take place within the next year.
Okay, we have an amended motion on the floor.
Second.
We have now a second on the amended motion. We also have the applicant who would like to make another comment. So before we vote on that, I'm going to give him an opportunity to do that. Sir?
Yeah, sorry about that. Thanks a lot. Because it's contingent on my neighbor fixing up his house and putting it on the market and selling, there is a possibility of it going beyond a year. So I would ask if you guys don't mind just to remove the time constraint, but still contingent on the land acquiring, but just to remove the time piece, if you would consider that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have no issue with that.
Okay, well,
I'm good with
thank you
that.
very much. So during the further discussion on the motions, my requirement would be no time limit, none, zero. That gives the applicant the chance to 2, 3, 4 years, because the variance is going to be put aside until such time as you acquire that land. Like to amend the motion again?
Yes, I would. I would amend the motion to remove the time restriction.
Okay, now we have an additional amendment change, so where's the second? Second. Now we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question. I just wonder, in the event they sell this property and this hasn't come to pass, would this transfer to a new owner?
Well, Katie says it transfers with the land. Is that right, Katie?
Correct.
So the next owner would have to, in order for him to get the variance, would have to purchase that one sliver of land, that one section of land before the variance is active. It doesn't make any difference whether it's this owner here or the next owner or the next 5 owners. The fact is that that requirement is to purchase that land before this is an active variance. Is that
Thank
the way
you.
I read it, Katie?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? I call for the vote. All in favor?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. What are we voting on? We've got 3 motions live.
Oh, okay. So,
And you can't have 3 motions on the floor.
no. What's happened is we have amended motions We have an amended motion right now.
An amendment to the motion, okay?
We've had 3 amendments to the motion.
Okay, so we got 3 amendments to the,
And so right now, we're looking to approve the 3rd amendment. So if you'd like to have Steve read it again, we can do that. Would you like that again? Okay, Steve, once again.
Yes, the motion is move to approve variance 18-009 to reduce the front yard setback to 17.1 feet to allow the construction of an addition to a single-family house on a lot with boulders, I beg your pardon, and hope they have boulders and legal non-conforming front yard setback under the condition to add and record with Yavapai County the additional 1,842 square feet of land area to the existing lot as shown on the map included in the application.
That's the amended motion. And who's going to second that motion for me, please? Okay, we have a second on that motion. Is that okay, Ray?
I think it'd be a lot easier if he just offered a substitute motion for his first motion and included it all.
Okay.
And then you would only have to vote once. But the way I'm sitting here, you gotta vote 4 times.
No, we go.
There is a motion now on the floor that's been seconded. And that is the substitute. So it's kind of the one up on the
Said
board.
substitute.
There were 3 or 4 amendments to the original motion, all of which were seconded prior to any vote. So I understand sometimes it gets bureaucratic, but that's where you stand right now. There's an active motion that's been seconded, and you're in debate right now. And once you finish your discussion and debate, you guys be ready to vote on that one.
Okay, so Ray, you would be comfortable for us to add substitute in that particular wording?
Just that word, one word.
Okay, let me go back to Steve once again. Steve, all you have to do is add the word substitute.
And I do so. I substitute this motion to move to approve variance 18-009 to reduce the front yard setback to 17.1 feet to allow the construction of an addition to a single-family house on a lot with boulders and legal non-conforming front yard setback under the condition to add and record with the Yavapai County the additional 1,842 square feet of land area to the existing lot as shown on the map included in the application.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If none, I call for the vote. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried unanimously. Oh, by the way, because we had an added member who came in late, the requirement was 4, and we also have our councilman, Jim Lamberson, who has now also come into the chambers. So I want to recognize him. Okay, so anything for the good of the order?
I'd just like to say thank you, Ray. I appreciate the opportunity to speak so much in front of the public.
Professional parliament.
Because you know how shy I am.
He takes a lot of liberties, this guy here. Okay, so for the good of the order, I'd like to recognize Councilman Lamberson because we hadn't had any meetings since the time he was gotten a certificate from the Gemologist Society. So, Mr. Lamberson, congratulations for that particular certificate and recognition because I think you deserve it. Any other further motions or discussions in good of the order? If not, meeting adjourned.